Firstly, we've been here before. The rejection of the Christian understanding has happened before. In the Middle Ages, well, you've probably heard of Dante, the poet Dante. Well, he wrote some political philosophy as well. And he and another chap called Marsilius of Padua, two very influential thinkers in their time, put forward the idea that man is merely part of a greater collective, and that it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning in and of itself. They were very influential people. Well, what happened? The Christian notion prevailed. Secondly, we live in a constitutional democracy, in the rough and the tumble of a free society. We argue, we disagree, but we all practice the dangerous sport of freedom. And Ireland is a free society, and only free societies speak to the freedom of the human soul. We may be starting to see people in influential places in Ireland, in the media, the courts, Dáil Éireann, etc., pushing for policies and rights that strike against the dignity of the person. But it's not a done deal. Being harvesters for the reaping means to engage in our society and speak for the freedom and the dignity of human persons. In free societies, we must engage with each other and constantly win our chance to speak in the public square. If we don't engage and are content to let others fight the battles, then we've got no one to blame when abortion becomes legalised, when we begin embryonic stem cell research in our universities, when we start to euthanise the old and the infirm. Thirdly, most of us are committed to the preservation of human rights. Never mind the deep ecology people. Most of us are committed to the preservation of human rights. We recognise that human life is worth living and worth promoting and worth protecting. And our problem today is that some of us in our society simply do not see the humanity of others. It used to be the failure to recognise the humanity of slaves, of Jews, and other sections of the human race. Some today refuse to recognise the humanity of the unborn. Others, like the Spanish legislators that I was just talking about, confuse humanity with apes, and so can extend human rights to chimps, orangutans. Look, we might be confused as to who's in the human family and who's out of the human family, but there is still a profound commitment to the human family and to human rights. And this commitment is shared by religious and non-religious people alike. So what can we do? Okay, well, we hear a lot of talk about the culture of life and the culture of death. Just so we all know what we're talking about here, the so-called culture of life affirms that human life at all stages from conception through to natural death is sacred. Now, this is what John Paul II said. The culture of life, then, is a commitment to live out that recognition, that respect, and the protection of the sacredness of human life. The culture of death refers to support or even just tolerance of practices that do not recognise the sacredness of human life. The point I'm trying to make here today is that the culture of life and the culture of death are much more than positions taken on a political spectrum from left to right, liberal or conservative. It's so much more than just a trend in society. The cultures of life and death are something embodied, something that is lived and that extends from the depths of the human soul. In other words, it's a spiritual phenomenon that is played out personally and socially. For us, the culture of life is something that we live, that we embody as Christians, because it's something that we are. The culture of life must live within us because we freely consent to be men and women of life. And this is what is most urgent in our world today. Men and women who are witnesses to life because we have become life. We are life. And I'm not talking about the mechanical and biochemical processes at work in our bodies. Of course, everybody in this room is alive. I don't mean that. Life is a movement of the human soul. It's a movement that emanates from the mysterious depths of our existence. And you know Psalm 41, deep is calling on deep. Now, I'm a primary school teacher. My class were confirmed yesterday. Do we all remember our confirmation day? I wonder how many of us actually remember. Do you remember the gifts of the Holy Spirit that you received that day? Wisdom, knowledge, understanding, right judgment, courage, reverence, wonder in on God's presence. Used to be known as fear of God. These are like tools. They're like equipment that God has given us to go out into the world world and to be life. Do you remember the fruits of the Holy Spirit that we were all once taught? Love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, kindness, self-control. These are the fruits of the Holy Spirit. So they're the fruits of the harvesters. These are the signs that the Holy Spirit is alive in us and working in us and working through us. By just allowing ourselves to be that bridge between heaven and earth, we are life. And that witness is a powerful witness. Some of you know St. Francis, the famous phrase by St. Francis. He says, preach the gospel. And if someone asks, use words. Okay. His point is that words aren't going to mean anything if their truth is not being lived. So we must live truth, we must live life, we must be life. And there's been a lot of talk recently about hope and change and hope. But, you know, we have to be modest. We're not going to change the world ourselves. But what we can do is we can allow the Holy Spirit to move in us and to allow us to change hearts. We can allow God to shine in us, and with His luminosity, we can be a light to the world. The Christian depth of the human person is unknown, it's forgotten, or maybe it's just not recognized in our world today. By being life, by living right, we give back to our society the Christian understanding of humanity, which also means to build a society where all human life is treated properly. So what is our mission? In practical terms, well, it's to love God's children by giving them back their forgotten dignity. Restoring dignity to people, to God's children, is our most crucial task in the great harvest. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks to Dr. Greenaway for that excellent presentation there. We'll just take some questions now for bring us up to Holy Mass at 12 o'clock. So anyone to ask any questions there, please? Stunned into silence.